Okay, Dave, I'm going to go ahead and get started. Just keep an eye on the waiting room if additional people join.
Okay.
All right, sounds good. All right, so hello everyone who's on the call, and welcome back to the Beyond Backup webinar series. My name is Khalif, Woodard, Senior Marketing Manager here at Intelligent Generation. I'll be your host today. We have a packed agenda for this session. The regulatory landscape in Illinois is moving incredibly fast right now, and keeping up with it is critical if you want to protect your project economics pipeline moving forward. Before I hand things over, just a few quick housekeeping reminders. Please use the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen to submit your questions throughout the presentation. We are going to save all the questions for the very end of the presentation. We blocked plenty of time to get through them, so please put your questions in the chat box and we will answer them at the end of the presentation. Also, if you would like a copy of today's video recording, the slides, or our session notes, just reach out to me directly after the call and I will gladly send them your way. Today, we're diving deep into the CRGA bill, the SDVPP program, and the brand new tariffs that have been introduced. We also are going to give you a first look at the recent trailer bill and discuss what it means for energy storage in Illinois moving forward. And finally, because it's officially that time of year, we're going to talk about, how the FCP season is going internally. To break all of this down, I'm turning the floor over to our presenter today, Intelligent Generation's Chief Commercial Officer, David Braun. David, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Khalif. Advance a couple slides here. Thank you all for joining. This is another in our series of webinars. As you may recall, we did one several months ago about the CRGA bill and what was in it. And what is happening now is the utilities are starting to file their tariffs in compliance with CRGA, and we wanted to update all of our channel partners with the current status and what that means, and some of the details that are starting to get fleshed out and fill in the spaces, the white space that's in any bill. So Khalif, if you can advance the next slide, please. First I'll open by saying, I always say this, that we appreciate everyone on this call. I think I probably have talked to just about everyone on the call today, and IG, as you know, is an energy technology company, but what we are not is an EPC. We're not a battery manufacturer. We're not a battery installer. So we rely on our partners to build the projects, complete the projects that we need to operate. So and those that help to get customer deals closed and spread the word on batteries and get the projects that we need done. So we appreciate all of you and look forward to even bigger and more projects going forward. Just quick recap here on CRGA and what's in it. Don't want to dwell a lot on this. This has been covered in many different areas, but basically some of the high points. Creates a virtual power plant program for behind the meter batteries, as well as community solar, adding storage to that. Both of those can participate or have to participate in the VPP. It also created an interesting category of new, basically new batteries that qualify in Illinois, and that's this concept of a standalone distributed scale battery, which would be up to 5 megawatts. These would be or will be regulated at the state level and go through state utility interconnection processes instead of having to go to the ISOs, either PJM or MISO, respectively, between ComEd and Ameren for interconnection approval, and basically makes these state jurisdictional and distributed scale assets as opposed to utility scale. It also created some requirements for batteries to use time of use or real-time pricing. Khalif, advance the slide, please. And then at the utility scale, has a target of creating 3 gigawatts of batteries in the state to help meet state peaks in the future, especially as we are retiring the fossil fleet in Illinois ultimately. And though that utility scale set of batteries. We're talking about 20 megawatts of battery size and up, connected at transmission levels. Those will be contracted to the utilities directly through a process, an RFP process that's going to be run by the IPA. There's some other improvements and changes as well, and details that were in CRGA about siting and labor and things like that. So, Khalif, let's go to the next slide. But focusing on behind the meter, which I think is what most of us are here to talk about, in the distributed scale projects, the DG rebate continues at the $250 per kilowatt hour level for C&I. Batteries, it'll remain for another 4 or 5 years. I guess we're down to 3.5 years at the residential side at $300 per kilowatt hour, and then $250 after. The C&I value will remain in place through or until a new permanent VPP program is put into place. I'll talk about that a little further. So we do have several more years of runtime here on the upfront 250 before there might be changes to that. But there is now a cap at 5 megawatts as to how big a rebate you can get. So we'll touch on that a little more in a minute. Khalif, go to the next slide. But it does create this standalone distributed scale class of batteries up to 5 megawatts. That class will also get the $250 per kilowatt hour rebate, as will the community solar plus storage. So community solar projects can now add or be built with originally storage connected to it. Likely the way things are looking, that's going to have to be a DC coupled battery. Otherwise, if it's going to be AC coupled, I think the utilities, at least ComEd, will be looking at that as a standalone co-located project as opposed to being one single project at the community level. So a bit of intricacies there that we're still waiting to see. I also note that we don't have all the tariffs yet. What ComEd has filed and Ameren has filed so far are the SDVPP, the VPP program tariffs, and those are under review, but will probably take effect next month. But there are a lot of still unknowns around how the net metering is going to change or be applied to these standalone distributed scale projects, as well as community solar plus storage. So we're expecting ComEd has until next week, the 1st of July, to file its changes to the net metering tariffs. Ameren has already filed its net metering tariff change. They did very little to change net metering other than basically saying these kinds of projects qualify. So there's a lot of unanswered questions there that in Ameren that we're still waiting to hear, probably with some future tariff filings. But I'll talk about a little bit more detail about these types of projects in a few minutes. So the upside here on this slide, though, is the $250 per kilowatt hour rebates do apply in both cases, and that is up to 5 megawatts. Next slide. So let's talk about this DG rebate limit a little bit more, the 5 megawatt maximum. Before CRGA, there was basically no maximum to the size of a battery that could get the $250 per kilowatt hour rebate. And we were involved in a handful of projects that were as large as 20 megawatts. We hear there may have been some even bigger ones out there associated with data centers, but I don't know the specifics on those. That I think is bigger than I think a lot of the policymakers had intended, and they were looking at the size of the check that would have to be cut, and I think they were getting squeamish about that. So CRGA put in tried to put in a cap, and the way it was designed was they only put it into the net metering section. It didn't specifically say there was a 5 megawatt limit in the DG rebate section. And so there was some confusion then. It kind of created a loophole, And that loophole was closed up with a trailer bill that was passed in May. It still hasn't been signed by the governor, but there's all expectations that he will. But that trailer bill, among other things, put a limit on this. Policymakers didn't really want to put a dollar limit on it because they didn't want that dollar number out there in case people didn't like the size of it. But so they tried to write something around more technical specifications to that. This took quite a bit of negotiation by the joint solar parties who intervened and were part of that effort. That's an effort between ICEA, National SEIA, and the Community Solar and Storage Association, CCSA. So what we arrived at after negotiations with policymakers was it's a 5 megawatt limit, 5-hour duration, maximum 25 megawatt hours. And so effectively what that does is cap the rebate at $6.25 million without putting that cap into the bill directly. The reason we ended up at 5, some of the community solar developers wanted the ability to overbuild on the on the chemistry side, on the DC side of the battery, to plan for degradation over time. So instead of having an augmentation plan to add more batteries in the future as degradation was occurring and keeping up with a 4-hour duration, they basically wanted to be able to get the rebate on a pre-augmentation plan by oversizing the kilowatt hour DC side of the battery. There's some other things it does. I know we had some discussions with CellCube and other flow battery manufacturers who are, they're economically advantaged at longer durations. And so if you wanted a 6-hour or an 8-hour battery, or even a 12-hour battery, some of those have been discussed depending on use case. The flow battery manufacturers saw this as a great advantage and great opportunity, because before the CRGA Act, you would get a rebate for 12 hours worth of battery, which would be a very large number to help benefit that project and bring it in line in competition with shorter duration lithium. But that's kind of been taken out of the picture now. I could see in a future policy change or law down the road that there may be something specifically created to address long duration as the need for long duration comes into better focus. But for now, what we have from CRGA and the CRGA trailer bill is this 5 megawatt, 5-hour duration cap. This doesn't mean if you build a bigger battery, you don't get any rebate, but the most rebate you would get is this equivalent to 5-hour, 5 megawatt duration. So you could potentially build a 10 megawatt, 5-hour battery, but you would only get half the you don't only get half the rebate. You get the rebate for equivalent to a 5 megawatt, 5-hour. So that is a key change that was made that we wanted to make sure people were aware of as you think about project sizing. Khalif, do you want to go to the next slide? And now we'll turn to kind of I think maybe the main event here, which is the scheduled dispatch virtual power plant program. Because I know there's been a lot of, I don't know if I'd say anxiety, but certainly a lot of questions about what this VPP program would do to the marketplace, what the requirements were, does it affect at all the economics of batteries, and the answer ends up being it really is not going to affect much, and I'll tell you why in a second. But the whole premise behind this VPP program was that, and even back from CRGA, there was the expectation that batteries taking the DG rebate would have to do something in the future to participate in a program that would make sure that the batteries were providing value to the grid. ComEd never implemented anything for that, but Ameren did. Basically in Ameren, if you took the DG rebate, you had to also participate in its demand response program. So we've got one asset down in Ameren that is doing that. and did get the DG rebate, but ComEd never linked any requirement on dispatch for the battery. So CRGA created this, this virtual power plant program to have, something specific that the batteries have to do, and to make sure that they're reducing peak loads on the grid or helping the grid. So the concept here was that the batteries would be used to reduce the system peaks, the 5 CP events, both for transmission and capacity, benefiting the overall ComEd zone. I don't love the way they went about this in the scheduled dispatch program, and I was not shy about sharing my feelings with policymakers, but because it was thought of as being easy, they wrote into the law how a battery has to be discharged. And so what this was written as is the batteries, if you take the DG rebate and apply for that rebate after June 1st of 2026, so 24 days ago, the customer has to take this virtual power plant program, which means that starting next summer, the batteries will have to be discharged every day in the summer, weekdays, between 4 p.m. and 6 p.m. for behind the meter, residential up through C&I scale. For batteries that are standalone or paired with community solar, the window would be 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. on weekdays. So the requirement is discharging every day. And however, the law states that there can be no penalty for non-performance. And what was unclear, though, and I think a source of anxiety, at least for some of the developer community out there, was what does it mean? What do we have to discharge? And is that going to preclude discharging for reducing the true 5 CP events? Where we've ended up with this after negotiations with ComEd on the tariff itself is basically we've neutered this thing. Because my point has always been that once we have a couple hundred megawatts of batteries discharging all between 4 and 6 or 4 and 7 o'clock, guess what? The peak is no longer going to occur then, and it's going to move. It's going to move probably to earlier in the afternoon. I would expect somewhere between 2 and 4, possibly after 7, but that would be probably unlikely. So we'll have these batteries all discharging when we don't need it, and creating a peak at a different time. And on days like we've had over the past week, where temperatures in June, and this happens in September too, are in the 80s, in the 70s, power prices are very low. Now we're going to discharge a whole bunch of batteries into a low price energy market. We're going to send the energy market negative. We're going to cause a duck curve. So the answer I heard from policymakers is, well, then we can just go change the hours. So what does that take? Going back to the legislature? And so the legislature put in that the ICC can change the hours, but that's still going to take an ICC proceeding to do. We can discharge a battery in 2 seconds. We don't need to go to the state to ask permission to change it. So I'm just ranting here. Sorry. The program is flawed, but we've neutered it. So basically, what's going to happen is there will be a participation agreement that the customer has to sign. The customer can specify how much they are committing to discharge, and so we can put a low number on that. There is no minimum. There's no penalty for non-performance, and the payment, as it is in the law, is a pay on performance. So what that will allow us to do is to continue to target the hours that we forecast in our forecasting model as to when we think the grid peaks will occur, whether it's capacity or transmission. And then, so if that has to be a discharge between, starting at 2 o'clock, and so we run out of gas before we get to 6, that's okay, because what the calculation on compensation will be is just the average KW that was discharged during that 4 to 6 window over the season. And then ComEd or Ameren will pay that amount times $10 per kilowatt. That gets paid at the end of the year. So again, the compensation is just whatever the average discharge was during that 4 to 6 or 4 to 7 p.m. window during the summer. The utilities will average that, make that calculation, and then they will pay $10 per KW at the end of the year. that value is very de minimis. $10 per kilowatt or $10,000 per megawatt doesn't even pay for the maintenance on the battery. So this program, in our view, is really not a value creator. The value is still going to be in capacity and transmission reduction, and then grid services that we can provide. But this program now has been structured in a way that it doesn't interfere with our ability to create value the way we always have created value. So we haven't talked about this internally yet and set our plans out, but I would expect that we will dispatch our batteries to participate in the program, and so that we are viewed to be in compliance. But on critical days when the grid is peaking, we're going to go chase that peak, even if it means we don't have any kilowatt hours left in the battery between 4 and 6. And all that means is that this de minimis payment for core performance is not going to be as high. And we'll also come up with recommendations then on what to contract for in this participation agreement. The participation agreement is something that has not been written yet. We expect, JSP expects that we'll negotiate that with ComEd and Ameren down the road after all these tariff filings that have to be made get made, and the rate cases, if there are any, get run through, and the tariffs get approved. So, but we expect that the expectation is that participation agreement will be in place, and customers will need to sign that by the end of March of next year. And then the performance period will begin on June 1. Obviously, if you have a battery that is built and not ready to go June 1, you'll get whatever balance of that stub period that you have over the summer as your participation period. No penalty for performance. ComEd's tariff just says that if you tamper with data and basically falsify it to create a bigger payment, then they can remove you from the program. I don't see that happening, so I think that penalty is pretty low, or that risk is pretty low. From an enrollment period, the contracts will be for 5 years. The tariff will be for 5 years. However, and I'll get to this in a moment, there will be a future VPP program that will replace this. And then there will be a process where customers can elect to shift to that new program in the future, assuming it's better than this one. So, bottom line, this has become a non-event. It just requires. So if you just to review, if you apply for the DG rebate after June 1st of this year, the customer will have to take this program. We will operate in accordance with it, but it's a pay on performance, no penalty, and you can bid in basically less than your battery size, so we can protect the battery durations on this too, and avoid having to dispatch for dispatch when dispatch is not needed, which is a big problem with this program. So anyway, great. We'll take questions later. I'm sure I'm seeing some pop up. We'll address those in a few minutes. Khalif, can you advance to the next slide, please? So just a note here on the permanent VPP program, and we don't really have information on this other than timelines, but the utilities must file tariffs and design a program by the end of 2027, and then the commission basically has a year to approve. So they would be taking effect in 2029 is the expectation. And this would not just apply to batteries, but the program will need to include electric vehicle charging, potentially vehicle to grid, Internet of Things, thermostats, existing DR programs. There's a whole list of things that these programs have to include. I'm expecting that probably in 2027, there will be a workshop process that JSP and other interveners will participate in, and IG will do this as well, participate in with the utilities and the Commerce Commission staff to design what this ultimate program will look like. I think what we'll see is there, from a compensation standpoint, there will be some upfront payment. It probably will not be maintained at the $250 per kilowatt hour level, but then there will be pay on performance compensation numbers that will be hopefully more than the $10 per kilowatt per year that this current VPP program has, and then that will make up for basically getting an NPV that's going to be equivalent to the 250 per kilowatt hour that we see today. So I think the upshot on this is, for customers looking at doing a battery and they like the $250 upfront rebate, now is the time to do it, and don't wait for this program. Don't wait for potential changes to compensation down the road. We have a great program right now. It's time to do it while we have this program plus a great ITC that continues on. Khalif, let's go to the next slide. Just a reminder here, another thing that the CRGA did is require that customers with batteries do take some sort of a time of use or real-time pricing or hourly pricing program. That doesn't mean that they can't take a fixed hedge as well, as long as there's an underlying index contract on that. So this is a pretty common contract structure for retail energy suppliers. I think most have this. Some have some nice variations on it, but you basically take an underlying index contract and either layer in block hedges bought from the supplier, or I know Constellation and a few others offer percentage products. So half or say 3/4 of the customer's contract can be fixed, and then the balance is floating on index. As a former retail energy supply marketer, for industrial customers, I always recommend going on index anyway. Why pay hedge premiums and risk premiums on contracts when typically the hourly always ends up lower? You're taking a little bit of risk, but you can manage that with hedges. So I don't see this as a big deal, but it's something customers are going to need to be aware of. Next slide. Let's go to the next one. I don't think we need to cover this one. Standalone, a little more on the standalone program. So this is cool. This is new. A couple of other states have this too. I know New York has it in particular, where you can build in front of the meter battery up to 5 megawatts standalone. So this will have its own meter. In Illinois, you get the $250 per kilowatt hour rebate. This battery can participate in the VPP programs we just talked about, but they don't have to. And even if they sign up, they don't have to actually participate. If they do, they'll get paid the compensation that we talked about a minute ago, but they don't have to. So we're still waiting to see from ComEd what their net metering is going to look like on this, but what we're anticipating from a value stack perspective is these batteries will be on net metering. Obviously, there's no load here to offset the battery discharge. So as the batteries discharge, say pursuing a reduction in the 5CP values during peak grid events, that will create a negative PLC and a negative NSPL value for cap and trans. And ComEd, or the retail energy supplier under contract, if the site has one, they would provide, as a direct cash payment to the customer, they would provide the value of that negative capacity and transmission payment. So instead of having that offset the way it would on a behind the meter retail customer with load, this would create negative PLCs, and then ComEd would pay the customer, pay the developer for that capacity and transmission value. From an energy perspective, we're expecting it to be on hourly real-time pricing. So if it stays with ComEd, the project would be on BESH, Basic Energy Service hourly. That's a real-time price at ComEd zone. So as you charge, you'd be paying the real-time price. As you discharge, you'd be receiving the real-time price. We haven't seen this component, but we think from a distribution charge perspective, and this is going to be important to see how they do this, it will be classified just like any other load at a 5 megawatt classification. So, and probably also likely have to be primary metered. So what we've been hearing from a couple of developers who have submitted interconnection requests is ComEd is saying, no, you're going to take this as primary. service, you'll have to provide the transformer. ComEd's not providing a transformer. So basically that would create a relatively low distribution charge, but the customer would still be on the the same non-demand charge, or the peak and off-peak demand charge windows. So no demand charge being measured during the 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Weekday on-peak period. So as long as the battery's not charging during that on-peak period, the demand charges would be zero or minimal. But what would likely also apply are all of the other kilowatt-hour based charges that a normal retail customer would have today, which would be things like there's a distribution kilowatt-hour charge, you've got your energy efficiency charges, the zero emission credit charge, things like that would still apply, and that adds up to 2 to 2.5 cents a kilowatt hour. So you'd have to pay that on the import of power, but not get that back on the export of power. So that would be a demand charge, or not a demand charge, a distribution charge drag on the economics. So once we see all these tariffs get filed and understand how ComEd's structuring that net metering, make sure all these assumptions are true, then we'll be able to generate power plans and economics for this type of project. And we know we've got a lot of developers out there who are specifically looking at building these kinds of projects. They're already getting land control and even submitting interconnections in advance of building these great moneymakers. Really is what they're doing. So it is in front of meter, purely grid benefiting batteries, but being able to do this at a distribution scale and giving the distribution grid benefits, as opposed to the utility scale projects, which are just transmission scale and really just benefiting the wholesale transmission grid. A note on Ameren in this case, we're not really sure how Ameren's going to provide that capacity and transmission value, because historically Ameren has not provided negative PLCs and NSPLs for cap and trans on net metering. So that's kind of a mystery today, and it's something we're waiting for hearing from Ameren on how exactly they would pay that part of the compensation. So that's something yet to happen, but we do know, or at least we think we know, how ComEd's going to be doing it, and it looks like it's going to be beneficial. Khalif, let's go to the next slide. This one is more focused on community solar plus storage. This one, I'm waiting to see what happens on the net metering for this, the POGCS tariff, I think it is, because that's kind of unique and different than the behind the meter tariffs, or the one we just talked about for the standalone storage products, because the compensation on this is really at for the project owner from a kilowatt hour perspective. The compensation or the charges are based on the standard residential or small price to compare, not not the wholesale prices, hourly prices that we see for behind the meter and for standalone. So not really 100% sure how this is going to play out, but we do think that these batteries will have to be DC coupled. So it's likely what will occur is you'll have these batteries discharging every day from 4 to 7. The expectation is they would charge with excess solar. So the play here is to supersize the DC solar side of the project, clip that excess solar generation into the battery, sell it back to the grid between 4 and 7, or even beyond as the sun sets. That gives the developer more SRECs to sell, more kilowatt hours to sell at the community solar rates to its subscribers. But what I'm not sure of, though, is how the cap and trans will get compensated on these, especially if it's DC, and also if it's DC coupled. Most solar projects with DC, that's a one-way inverter, right? Just one way out. So a DC coupled solar plus storage project would probably not be able to do some of the other things we can do with batteries that are AC coupled in terms of frequency regulation and other ancillary services, and we can't charge it because there's a charge side on that. So some of that still needs to be worked out. But the 250 rebate does apply here, so I think we'll have a lot of solar developers looking at how they're going to work on adding batteries to these types of projects, because they're all definitely looking at to do that. So with that, that is our update for now. But Khalif, let's go to the next slide and we'll take some questions. So let me just pop open the chat function here, if I can find where it went. And we'll take a look at questions.
I have it up now.
Okay, great. Why don't you go ahead and read it? Thanks.
So the first question, Dave, from Kevin Souter. Can Ameren customers also select their KW commitment like ComEd customers?
That's the expectation. That yes, they will be able to do that. We reviewed that tariff. Their tariff was, I think, a little simpler than ComEd's, but yeah, that's the expectation there as well. But we'll have to see where things go with negotiating the participation agreements. But yes, that's the expectation.
Okay, great. And from Arnold Schrammel, how will ComEd measure discharge volume of battery when customers have both solar and batteries?
Yeah, what they're expecting, this is in the tariff, they're expecting that the battery measurement, the battery output will be provided by the asset owner or probably by IG. The batteries that we operate do have to have a revenue grade additional meter beyond the ComEd meter that measures at a very granular level. So we'll be able to use that data or data from the battery control system, and we'll need to submit that data to ComEd after the end of the summer so that ComEd can calculate those values.
Great, thank you. Next question is from Sebastian Priu. On a behind-the-meter scenario where the battery owner is not the user using the grid and purchasing electricity from the grid, third-party ownership, can the participation agreement with the utility be signed by the third-party owner? Would it be considered as a discrepancy if the customer under the participation agreement is different from the existing user or the meter/grid? Any provision on that?
That's a great question, Sebastian. And what I'm going to note as we go into negotiations on the participation agreement with the utilities, but they're built into the DG rebate language of the law. The asset owner, or whether that's the host customer or a third party, can receive the DG rebate. So I think by extension, they would have to consider the third party owner be party to that participation agreement as opposed to the host customer. So, but that definitely thank you for asking that question, because it's something I will note and make sure that's covered in the negotiations in the participation agreement. But I think by law they're going to have to allow for that.
Okay. Next, another question from Kevin Souter. Is there any risk that customers who take the ESS rebates now will be disqualified from participating in the full VPP program in the future to prevent double dipping on the utility incentives?
Well, it's not double dipping, it's required. This is a requirement, right? But I think once you get to the full VPP rebate or full VPP program, I think there will need to be a provision that would prevent that double dipping. So if you've already taken the 250 rebate and then enroll in that future permanent VPP program, there will definitely be some sort of different compensation structure for those batteries, because you're right, that would be double dipping, but that's already being considered by the policymakers. But yeah, that's a good point, Kevin.
Okay, next question from Joe Gordon. If clients are currently on a fixed rate contract with their supplier, when would they be required to move that contract over to an indexed or hourly one? What if the supplier requires they wait until their contract or current contract is up?
Good questions, Joe. In this, I have a basic question about this whole thing. The retail energy contracts have never been regulated directly by the state or the utility. So, there doesn't seem to be anything that was created in the statute to point to who is the police for these contracts. So we're not. I think that's an open question that we don't know the answer to, but it may force retail suppliers to renegotiate these contracts if the customer is required by law to move to an index contract. They may not have a choice. So that's something that will have to be worked out in the implementation of programs.
Great, thanks. Next question from Kate Howling. Does IG provide controls for DC coupled systems? Meaning, can you issue control signals to the solar as well?
Good question, Kate. It's not something that we've done to date, but it's something that I think we could consider. In terms of being able to control or curtail solar. Yeah, we'll see. That's not something we haven't really gone into yet, but that could be a future product we could offer.
Great, thanks, Dave. Next question from Tim Grawl. Can you speak to the rollout and timing of the residential portion of this program?
The residential portion will be rolled out in the same timelines I laid out for CNI. So residential users who apply for the DG rebate after June 1 of this year, so 3 weeks ago, they will need to participate in the SDVPP program. And so there will be a participation agreement that they'll have to sign, and they'll have to participate in the SDVPP program, so the daily 4 to 6 p.m. discharge starting next June. I think we don't do residential, so I can't really speak to this with a lot of knowledge and specificity on what we're doing in this. But I think the idea on that at the residential level is it would be set and forget. You would just program that into the control system from the battery that every day it's going to discharge from 4 to 6. How that charges, I don't know if that then becomes some kind of overnight charge setup or charge from the solar that it's typically going to be attached to. Those are some things the residential developers will have to take care of. I think in terms of a company like a SunGrow not SunGrow, Sunrun, that is out there installing batteries and solar on residential customers. They may have their own control overlay that will do that dispatch of batteries and control for when they're charging and discharging. So that's something to talk with companies like that about if they're providing VPP services to residential customers. And I know Sunrun specifically. I mentioned them because I know specifically that they will be providing SDVPP programs.
Okay, great. Next question from AJ Patton. For a developer building a portfolio of standalone behind-the-meter batteries across master-metered multifamily or commercial properties, what incentive and revenue stack should we consider base case real for 2026-2027 underwriting versus future upside? Specifically, how should we layer the $250 per kilowatt rebate, SDVPP compensation, and 5CP management?
Work with us. We'll help you do it. We have the modeling to do that. We're not up and running on that yet because I'm waiting for the tariff set to come out, but hopefully after next week we'll be able to help create that discounted cash flow model and all the economics around that, and basically specifically to how we will be dispatching the battery, and then of course that layers in and takes into account the upfront rebate, 5CP management, SDVPP compensation, and other grid services that we can provide. So definitely reach out to Eric or I or Khalif, and we can get you set up with those economics. And this isn't just for AJ Patton, but this is for anybody out there. We have the POWR plan. We will be modifying that, updating that accordingly to be able to model out these standalone projects, and should have that ready in July after we get the tariffs.
Perfect. Thanks, Dave. I actually have a few questions as well.
Yep.
Right. So even though the full details of the trailer are still being ironed out, are there any immediate red flags or specific opportunities in it that should change how our partners are prospecting for new projects today?
I don't think there's a lot. I think this has drawn a lot of attention to the space, and I know there's a lot of attention from people outside the state suddenly saying, "Oh, look, Illinois passed these things. Isn't it great now?" But the real benefit here with the $250 per kilowatt hour rebate, it's been in place for 4 or 5 years. This is nothing new. I think the VPP program draws attention because it gets national attention and has drawn in some more developers and people looking at doing this, adds a lot of credibility to what we're doing. So I think right now is the time to go market this. Right now is the time to reach out to customers that you may have installed solar for in the past 5 or 10 years and pitch adding a battery, because the economics are fantastic. When you stack in the DG rebate, you stack in the ITC, especially if you can get 40 or 50% ITC on this, and then the accelerated depreciation treatment that's available from last year's tax bill. A great amount. We're talking 80% or more of the capex of the project is paid for right up front in year one with incentives. So we think Illinois is the best place in the country to be doing batteries at this distributed scale right now, and will be for the next several years. And other states are starting to look at Illinois and saying, this is the model. This is how we get distributed DG built in the state. So places like New Jersey are looking to Illinois as a model for how to build a program. So right now is the time to go do it and get out and get the deals closed. We've got a big pipeline, but we're scaling up our systems to be able to handle a lot more battery capacity in the future.
Thanks, Dave. And this will probably be the last question. It's a bit of a baiting question, but we're in the thick of 5CP season. From an operational standpoint, how does intelligent generation software handle the unpredictable nature of these coincident peaks compared to a standard unmanaged storage system?
Yeah, we've got a model that we have been implemented and have been developing and continuing to refine for over 10 years to specifically predict when the grid peaks will occur, and that's both at the zonal level, which is what affects the transmission NSPL value, so that ComEd is a zone, so anything in ComEd territory is going to get that zonal PLC peak, but that peak might be different in different days, different hours between ComEd and say AEP in Ohio or PECO in Pennsylvania. So we're going to model all of those specifically. We've also enhanced our prediction capability with an AI model that we've been deploying as well over the past 2 years, and continue to refine that as more data comes in to be able to help its predictions. Our historic legacy model actually last year was a better predictor than the AI model. The AI model had both false positives and false negatives, but at the end of the day, either model just goes to inform our great operations team who actually make the decisions. We don't rely on just the machines to do this. There are people behind this, experts like Mark Throom and Jack Kane, who are actively talking on these days and making decisions based on the data that's being provided by our models, but also with inputs for weather. For instance, we had 3 days of dispatch about 2 weeks ago. I think it was the week that ended on June 12th. Those days, Illinois hit a peak on Monday, but I'm sorry, on Tuesday, but then PJM hit peaks on Wednesday and Thursday, so we dispatched all 3 days. But on 2 of those days, a thunderstorm blew through ComEd's territory and dropped ComEd load. In less than a half an hour, ComEd load dropped by 5,000 megawatts. It was an incredible thing to see, and a big severe thunderstorm, as some of you may remember. And so that creates challenges, but that's why we have humans in the loop, looking at weather forecasting, looking at the live radar, and being able to say, hey, you know what, we might want to move our dispatch up an hour because that thunderstorm might drop the load. So that's the intelligence we have behind it, and then we can push a button and then dispatch all of those batteries. I think a decision was made very late one of those days as that thunderstorm grew to say, hey, let's discharge right now at the top of the hour. And within seconds, we had the batteries fired up and discharging because we were ready for it. So that's the technology stack that's been developed so that we can have that kind of flexibility and be able to respond in real time to market conditions. And by the way, we hit both of those peak hours. Or I guess all three of those peak hours last week. We successfully hit. We discharged the batteries during what resulted in what ultimately was determined to be those peaks. Next week is coming up with some more very hot weather. I think we're expecting probably to maybe even have 4 days of discharge next week, starting on Monday. But then with 90-degree plus weather stretching at least until Wednesday or Thursday, I think I saw. So we'll be at it again and getting those predictions and those predictions set and the batteries discharging on time.
Okay.
Any further questions?
Yeah, I was going to ask if you weren't able to ask your question during the session, please follow up via email to myself or Dave, and we'll make sure to follow up with you. Other than that, Dave, thank you for sharing your insights today. You always do an amazing job keeping us and all of our partners ahead of the curve on these types of policy shifts. For all of our POWR partners on the line, your next step is very simple. Let us handle the complexity of these new tariffs and programs for you. If you have a prospect or an active project in Illinois, reach out to us to request a POWR plan so we can accurately model your numbers based on the latest updates. As a final reminder, if you want a copy of today's video recording, the slide deck, or the session notes, just shoot me an email. I will get those right over to you. Other than that, thank you all for joining us on the Beyond Backups webinar series. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we will see you at the next webinar.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time.